All right, so this lecture assumes that you have already chosen your 3 ads for the essay. It also assumes that you have looked at the criteria for the advertisement analysis essay. It also assumes that you have read or viewed the 6 secondary sources specific to this particular assignment. And it also assumes that you have, at the very least, accessed and just gone over quickly the list of rhetorical terms and strategies. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And one thing that it's important to remember is that, you know, it is setting you up for a compare and contrast essay, absolutely. This is especially true with regards to the organizational pattern. But mainly what I'm really hoping that you'll do is just mostly compare, because you are comparing with a larger argument in mind, and that larger argument is going to be specific to the type of product and how that industry advertises its products to its consumers. So you're going to use comparison mostly. The only time you would potentially use a strategy in which you are analyzing the differences of your 3 ads is if you are anticipating your a potential skeptic or an objector to your argument, then you would definitely want to try to note some differences in your ads but refute them. So just know that I'm mainly looking for you to compare these ads because you're trying to make a larger argument about the advertising industry at large. So just keep that in mind. A couple of things just before we go through, and I'll give you an example of how to do something like this. But the first thing you need to do when you're writing a comparative analysis of any kind is you need to establish a frame of reference. If you looked at the summary and analysis lecture, you will have noticed that when you made your thesis statement or created your thesis statement, you created it through some particular lens. And this is basically asking you to do the same thing, is, establish a frame of reference, create a lens in which you're going to analyze your products. And in this case, the frame of reference will be rhetoric. You're going to be using the language of argument. And you can refer to the list of rhetorical terms and strategies here. And you just can click on that link and it'll take you right to it. And you can just quickly go through these. And you'll see the strong ones, ethos, pathos, and logos. Those were also in the backpacks versus briefcase reading that you read on how to perform a rhetorical analysis. So you should at the very least be familiar with the language of argument. If you find that you need to know more about these, which is definitely going to be the case, then it's up to you to look them up and try to find more information on that particular type of strategy, because you're going to be using it to make your claims. So if you need to know more about it, look it up. And you have access to that, like I previously mentioned, you have access to that via this particular lecture. So once you have established your frame of reference, you need to briefly mention your grounds for comparison. And this is just, it can be done really, really quickly, a sentence or two. And the grounds for comparison is basically the rationale behind your choice of primary sources. It lets your reader know why your choice is deliberate and meaningful, not random. For example, why are you choosing fast food hamburger ads for analysis instead of charity commercials? Or why are you choosing men's deodorant over women's deodorant? Or and another thing you can also choose is, why choose Gain, All, and Arm & Hammer as laundry detergents over another 3? So what is it about your subject matter? Basically you're asking, what is it about your subject matter that makes it worthwhile amongst all of the potential choices? And how do those ads best illustrate your point? So again, a couple sentences in the introduction, just establishing importance and meaning. And, once you've done that and once you've looked at all 3 of your ads and you know your ads well, then you formulate your thesis. And in context of your ad essay, the ads should relate to one another in such a way that you make a larger claim. You're not making a claim specific about those 3 ads. You're making a claim about those 3 ads as they relate to advertising at large. And again, refer to the secondary sources that you have read. That's going to be Masters of Desire, The Science of Persuasion, An Interview with Naomi Klein, How to Detect Bullshit, and The Greatest TED Talk Ever Sold. That's the language that you're going to use for your argument. And so feel free to refer to those often and frequently while you are preparing for this essay, and definitely use them as secondary sources to support your thesis that is about the industry of advertising. Once you have your thesis statement, you want to figure out how you're going to present your essay, how you're going to present your thesis, and what your arrangement's going to be. And there's two really big ones for an essay of this type. One is the point by point, option one over here on the left, and you basically mention your essay is organized by your points rather than your ads. So if you look at my example thesis here that says the overtly sexual and masculine nature of men's deodorant commercials appeals to the need for dominance, prominence, and high performance. As such, the ethos of such ads demonstrates an unhealthy and unrealistic view of the self. So basically what I've done is I've just broken my thesis statement out into 4 points. Okay, and remember that point makes a larger claim about the men's deodorant commercials at large. I don't mention the specific names of my products in my thesis statement. I just make that claim and say that they are representative of this particular type of industry. So point one, men's deodorant ads are overtly sexual and masculine. So I would begin my essay with point one, and then I would discuss how all 3 ads represent that particular point. And then I would conclude that point and transition to point number 2, and then I would discuss how that particular point is represented in the 3 advertisements, and so on and so forth. Another option is the subject by subject organization, in which you organize by ad instead of point. So you would begin your advertisement about men's deodorant with either Axe, Arm & Hammer, or Old Spice, depending on what you choose and depending on how you order them. And that's one thing you need to make very sure of, is that you have good, strong transitions in between your points and your subjects, because you need to justify your logic. You want to explain to your reader why, for example, why are you starting with men's deodorant ads being sexual and masculine? You don't have to do it directly. You don't have to say, I am beginning with men's deodorant ads that are overtly sexual and masculine because of A, B, and C. But your point needs to be strong enough that it deserves to go at the beginning. And so on and so forth about your ad. You can, choose to begin with Old Spice because it is representative of this type of industry, more so than the other two. While the other two are certainly relevant, point or subject one or subject A is more relevant, or vice versa. You can start with the one that's least relevant and go to most relevant, or it's up to you to establish that hierarchy, and you will establish that hierarchy in your thesis statement. So and as you'll note here at the bottom, there are certainly pros and cons to each of these patterns. For a point-by-point organization pattern, which is this one over here on the left again, you risk confusing your reader in a discussion of one aspect for each ad, meaning you're breaking out the ads, and that can be confusing. But you're also risking the same thing in a subject-by-subject pattern. Is you list 3 large chunks of information, so you really run the risk of summary more so than analysis in a subject-by-subject essay. But choose whichever one's going to best fit your writing style and your material. It is entirely up to you. So once you have figured out a basic organizational scheme, you want to start writing. So while you're writing, don't forget to link A, B, and C. That's add A or point 1, or to add 2 or point 2, and so on and so forth. Is you need to remember how each of your paragraphs is going to link back to the thesis. And without the links, your reader has no idea how your argument is advancing. And you want to make transitional links more so, like I said, on comparing than contrasting, but make sure you have that those comparative transitions built in there. And then just a note about the conclusion. When you conclude your essay, make sure, your comparative essay and any essay really, you want to make sure you summarize the points. But you also want to make sure that you answer the so what question, and you want to kind of leave your reader with something to think about and re-emphasize your points in a new way. So make sure you avoid the generic conclusion that, oh well, as we've noticed, all the ads are similar, but they are a little different. don't do that. Make sure you have a real strong conclusion. Don't give me a forced, lazy conclusion. And the same thing with your thesis statement is don't let me know that the ads are similar but different in your thesis statement, because that's not the nature of this essay. And some useful advice you can look up here. Make sure that you are running a tight ship with regards to your thoughts. Make sure your body paragraphs only present evidence that relate to your thesis. Stay relevant throughout the essay. Write for an audience other than myself or your peers. Avoid impressionistic language, big, vague terms like great, awful, hell, horrible. You want to be really, really specific and make sure that you are presenting well thought ideas and not just big, sweeping language. And, I see this a lot. Just make sure that you don't tell me what you're going to do. Just do it. Just get to it. You don't need to spell out a plan of attack. Just do it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to run through 3 ads. We're going to analyze them, or I guess I'm going to analyze them very quickly for you and show you kind of how this type of thinking is done. But before we get started, the bulk of your essay is about your ads. It's not about what other people think about your ads. It's about your ads, and it's up to you to know them well enough that you can present a thorough, detailed analysis of each ad. So before you begin with any other type of secondary source, you need to make sure that you know your ads, you know your ads well. So we'll go ahead and start with ad 1 about the luxury, where our product in this particular case is luxury car companies. So here is ad 1. While we're doing this, think about some things you notice. Okay, so when you look at your first ad, you want to watch it probably several times, but at least make a list of what you notice as it pertains to the assignment. A couple things you'll notice about this particular ad is there's very little light. It's a really, really dark ad. It discusses looking back while driving forward, and it may be suggesting that to become something great, you have to consider where they came from. So in this particular case, it may be possible to look, it may be relevant to look into the history of the car company. Why are they talking about looking back? I have no idea. But another thing they're doing is appealing to authority. In this case, the authority is a celebrity. And basically, this is a really simple ad. It's just a guy driving and talking in the dark. So just keep that in mind. And then we're going to go to the second ad here. All right, so a couple just quick observations about this particular ad is visually a lot happens. There's a lot of images of rundown neighborhoods, city artwork, and signs indicating that the city is in Detroit. And in that case, it's really appealing to this, oh no, it's really appealing to this idea of history. You need to know some context. You need to understand that Detroit filed for bankruptcy. There's very little color. It's a lot of gray and black. But when there is color, a lot of it is red, white, and blue. And I just noticed the last time a lot of gold, which is suggesting a patriotic theme. And this patriotic theme is definitely duplicated with language about the American dream. It's a lot of hardworking determination. The hottest fires make the hardest steel, and that's a good comparing to other companies. Our fires are the hottest. It's definitely also appealing to authority, which is Eminem, which appeals also to contrast. Excuse me, it appeals to context. You would have to know that Eminem is from Detroit, and it's nostalgic. It's just as focused on looking back in order to figure out where you're going, and which is the same as the Lincoln ad. So now we're going to look at our final luxury car ad commercial. See if we can't make an argument. Okay, and then a final note about this particular ad is there's a lot of appealing to authority. The actor is Neil McDonough, who, if you've seen Justified, you wouldn't recognize. I think he's in some other stuff too, but it also mentions some pretty popular names: Les Paul, Muhammad Ali, and Bill Gates. Definitely focuses on the language of the American dream, which is work hard. You can do anything if you just believe in yourself. And it also, like the last ad, compares us to something else. And in this case, it's comparing Americans to other countries. We work harder and more frequently because we are more determined. And it also justifies the consumer's want. Stuff is okay. You work really hard, so you deserve it. So once you have your three ads and you have, and certainly your list hopefully should be a lot longer about your three ads. For the sake of time, this is just a short, quick rundown. And now you're looking at your list and you're trying to find similarities, and from those similarities, you want to make a particular type of claim. And so just a quick thesis about this is that the Cadillac, Lincoln, and Chrysler commercials market their luxury cars to a nostalgic, patriotic, and driven male consumer whose obsession with both work and status is justified by their level of determined and hard work. You could do really any number of thesis statements based on these three ads alone. Just choose what works at the time. And then you'll notice my point one is broken out here, that you have a nostalgic and patriotic consumer. I would support that by talking about the appeal to history and visual rhetoric. Same thing, point two, that the luxury car companies are obsessed with stuff and status. And so I would discuss with the appeal to authority and logos, which is the logic of you work hard, you deserve it. And this is point three, determined and hardworking. I would discuss logos, pathos, repetition, visual rhetoric. Anyway, so on and so forth. And so, really the trick with this assignment is choosing the right ads. Not all luxury car company ads are going to do this. Definitely not at all. But you have to command and marshal your sources to do what you want them to do. That's definitely being focused and selective, as was mentioned in the summary and analysis lecture. You know, you have to choose the right ads. And so if you find that the ads that you chose are not working and they're not giving you that larger argument, then you need to move on. Don't just stick with them because you already did all this work on them. You may have to choose something different. And also, with regards to your secondary sources, you know, the language of argument was given to you, and you have it in your in Moodle, and it's the Masters of Desire, the Culture of American Advertising. This is a really important one. It's quite lengthy, but it's definitely going to help you when you're supporting your claim about X product. You also have the interview with Naomi Klein to refer to. You have the How to Detect Bullshit to refer to. When you are trying to figure out how to do a rhetorical analysis, you have the source Backpacks versus Briefcase, and it discusses the use of ethos, pathos, logos. It also discusses the rhetorical situation and how arguments are presented. And then you have, to further support your claims about argument, you have The Greatest TED Talk Ever Sold, and you also have The Science of Persuasion. So you definitely can use other sources, other secondary sources, especially if they are specific to the product. But really spend a lot of time in the language of argument, in the language of persuasion, in the language of advertising, because that's the goal of this essay, is to make that larger claim about that particular industry. So be careful not to get overwhelmed with other secondary sources, and really know your primary sources well before you even begin to support them with your secondary sources. So as always, you can send me an email if you have any questions about this, and I hope that it was helpful.